Hola, WHODEY NATION en español. This is again Orson G. And we are joined today by John Sheeran that has some news for us. We remember him from Cincy Jungle, but as of last month of March, he's joining A to Z. We've already checked down some of his material. And well, John, thank you again for being again in the show and joining the Latin American audience. How you been?
I've been good, like you said, writing for a new website, doing basically the same thing as I did at Cincy Jungle, and yeah, so just a new publisher, but obviously Cincy Jungle is an amazing place, and everyone should continue to still read them. They will continue to do great work. They have continued to do great work after I departed, but yeah, if you want another news source to kind of get your Bengals news, I run the beat there at a2zsports.com/Cincinnati.
There you go. And of course, you all know where he's at on Twitter. He's very active around there. So we highly recommend you go check his material out every day. Or, well, maybe off season is not, that high season in which we have information running around every day. But surely when something comes around, you're surely covering it. And, well, of course, everyone should be doing it. So, well, talking about the Bengals, John, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of expectations, a lot of, thoughts running around. And for starters, I would like to know from you, what do you see these Bengals, or where do you see these Bengals evolving from compared to the team that we saw last season?
Yeah, it definitely starts offensively because, I mean, as we all kind of saw, it was the scheme in itself was very disjointed with the run game and the pass game. And in the beginning of the season, it was very predictable to kind of figure out from the pre-snap, okay, what the play is going to be. With a better offensive line that's capable of doing more things and is capable of holding up without having to just kind of hold their hand, you just are injected with more diversification with what you can call. And the Bengals' run game in itself was really successful when they were out of shotgun, because that's just how that was the scheme that they found best matched the personnel, and that's probably going to be the case again this year. But should they be able to have more success running from under center, that just opens up the offense a lot more. And I think that's the key to gaining more explosive plays, which is also where they need to take another step, because as they found last year, they can't just bomb it to Jamar and T at any time that they want. The safeties are going to be keying in on some of those play calls. So being under center, having more condensed formations, and then getting play action off of a run game under center, that can lead to more space being created down the field for the likes of Jamar and T to do the things that we all know that they can do. And it'll just make the offense a lot better, and it'll be just easier to just call plays on a week-to-week basis. And on defense, they need to finish these pressures more often. Like Trey Hendrickson, he's a really good pass rusher. We all know that. But DJ Reader can't be your second best pass rusher in terms of productivity and getting pressures. Like, they need more from Sam Hubbard. They need more from just that edge group in general. And I think that's why Miles Murphy was the pick, not only because he can grow into a solid pass rusher himself, but he can give Hendrickson and Hubbard more rest throughout the season, throughout these weeks, where they're more pressured towards the games that truly do matter, and turning those pressures into sacks, or just generating more pressure in general, just makes the defense a lot better. So those two areas, I think, will just make the team a lot more well-rounded than they were last year.
So getting to those points, I would like to add a few things. So do you see on offense, let's talk about offense first. Do you see that quick game in which sometimes Joe Burrow didn't have the chance to check down as he does, or maybe extend the play a little more? Do you see that quick game maybe diminishing in the play calling next year?
Potentially, but not by a ton, because I still think it's like the base of what they like to do, and it's still, I mean, going back to LSU, that was like the base of that offense, right? It's what Burrow's comfortable, and he's always going to be more comfortable in shotgun. The fewer amount of times that he has to turn his back to the defense, the better. But obviously, getting more under center work to make it less predictable, and just put the onus more on the defense to decide, okay, how are we going to defend this? That'll just make the Bengals' lives ultimately easier at the end of the day, but you'll still see a bunch of quick slants and flat routes from the Bengals receivers and Burrow getting the ball out quickly because it's still one of his strengths, and it still makes the offensive line's job a lot easier. Even if with the addition of Orlando Brown and whoever is going to be a right tackle, the offensive line should be able to hold up in pass protection more. But obviously, if you're holding the ball for 3 seconds, for 30 snaps and dropbacks a game, it's going to make it's going to make it harder to protect against that. So Burrow will still get the ball pretty quickly, but you'll just see more of those longer developing plays kind of sprinkled in there as the season goes on.
And of course, you are talking about something very interesting, and it is the profile of the offensive line. As much as some of us see this offensive line more oriented for run protection, more than pass protection, how do you see that line evolving? Of course, with Orlando Brown on board, making maybe Cordell Volson's game maybe reaching a higher expectation, running through Karras and Kappa, and with the big question mark of the right tackle, do you see this running game maybe evolving to something different, to the expectations that some of us have of finding that Samaje Perine replacement, which might be not that much necessary if things change, as you said?
Yeah, so the offensive line right now, I think Orlando Brown's biggest impact will probably be in pass protection, just because
Okay.
like going from Kansas City to Cincinnati, Mahomes is phenomenal in every way, shape, or form, but Mahomes can also do things that other quarterbacks can't. He can get away with some things that other quarterbacks couldn't. He can have these elongated dropbacks and he can kind of drift out into the pocket. And when you have a tackle like Orlando Brown, who is pretty good, but his weakness is defending speed and quickness around the edge, when you make it easier for edge
Mm-hmm.
rushers to kind of get around you like that because of what the quarterback is doing, it leaves your offensive tackle out to dry in some cases, but that's not really the case with Joe Burrow, right? He's only going to take, these 3-step, 5-step drops, and he's going to maintain integrity with his depth in the pocket. And that's going to make Orlando Brown a lot better because it's impossible to go through him or inside of him, right? It's easier to go on the outside because he's not the quickest guy, even if he's a humongous man, right? When you can soften that edge for the edge rusher to kind of get around you because of what the quarterback or the play call is, it just makes it harder. So Orlando Brown's impact will be he's just a mammoth of a man, right? It's just impossible to get through him. And you have at least now 4 offensive linemen who are all really good against power, and that just will create a stable pocket for Joe Burrow to kind of conduct what he needs to do. As far as the run game goes, I still think the group is still designed, and their athleticism levels, that just what they do well for gap scheme, more downhill runs where the guys kind of get vertical. You have your duo blocks, your combo blocks, which
Mm-hmm.
just basically get mixing north and south as quick as possible. But I still think that they would like to be able to do some zone concepts, because again, the more you can do, the more diverse you are, the harder it is to defend you. So yeah, it's nice to have your bread and butter stable concepts, but if the offensive line is just a more stable unit and is able to do more, then they should absolutely try to expand what they can do and maybe get back into some of those zone concepts that they tried to do last year, but obviously they realized that the unit was just not going to happen.
Exactly, and that was my next question. We saw it on the Carolina game, in which they went from zone to gap, and that really helped. Um, and that's exactly where the big question marks are right now, since the most I think the biggest argument within that RB unit is the explosiveness, but not the pass pro. So something's got to change, and maybe Callahan and Taylor are, foreseeing something for that, for those formations and those schemes in which they might get faster in the running game, and maybe that will also redistribute the way we've seen this attack behaving.
Yeah, and Mixon, like I don't think he's like better or worse at either type of concept, but Chase Brown
Mhm.
specifically, the guy that they drafted, he ran a lot out of shotgun in Illinois. He ran a lot of power concepts where like you had guards pulling around the line of scrimmage. I think that's something that Cordell Volson can do pretty well, and I'd be interested to see if they kind of do that more. You have obviously Alex Kappa and Ted Karras, kind of pinning those guys and let Volson kind of run around and do his thing as an athlete. It'd be kind of cool to see those concepts kind of get into the playbook a little bit more. But obviously, Chase Brown is that injection of speed and explosion that they just, not even with Samaje Perine did they have. Like Perine gave the Bengals a big boost in terms of being able to break tackles and maybe extend some runs. But you didn't really have a breakaway threat like Chase Brown is. He's a low 4.4 runner, despite being north of 200 pounds. So he's got some power to him, but he's got a lot of elusiveness. He broke, I think, 80 something tackles for Illinois last year, which again, he ran the ball over 300 times. So naturally, he was going to accumulate a lot of broken tackles. But it was still an impressive number, and it's still a testament to the balance and the power that he kind of runs with. And it's really hard to bring him down with just one tackler, which unfortunately has been the case with Joe Mixon in recent years. And that's an area that he needs to improve on as well. And hopefully when he's trusting his offensive line better, he can run with a little more confidence. And maybe you can see some elusiveness and power that you haven't seen in years past with him. So all those things are needed for this running game to kind of improve.
Yeah, and hopefully that will bring the Bengals game to the next level. But we also saw past camps some sort of play action, going around. It happened on some training sessions, but I'm not sure if they're really gonna add a lot of those plays into the playbook. I don't know if you see it. Of course, it's desirable. We'd like to see Joe Burrow going, to the opposite side from the offensive line.
Yeah, they were just terrible at those rollouts where they had Burrow kind of on his own. There were like, it's designed to have like one unblocked rusher, but it was just far too easy to kind of just disrupt that play. I think a lot of the play action that we saw from minicamp was out of shotgun, so it's almost like they were just like extended RPOs, which are still going to be a pretty focal point in the offense. But getting more production out of play action is necessary because it's from an NFL league, like from an NFL standpoint, they're not gimmies, but they're supposed to be kind of easy yards for the quarterbacks to get. And it's kind of been a chore for the Bengals for whatever reason. Maybe just Burrow's not really comfortable in it. And maybe that was a reason why it was a point of emphasis this offseason, to just being able to make sure that they're competent there. So when they have the opportunity to get those easy yards, they can get them, because that's honestly, Orson, like been an impressive thing about the Bengals offense because of how efficient that they've been despite not having a really good play action game. Like, again, that's supposed to boost your offense, and it's almost been like a hindrance for them.
Exactly. And well, maybe that's relying on the depth that they have in the WR position, and how they adjust either in offense and defense. And well, they have a lot of talent around Joe Burrow, but for this season, they might be a few units that are not as deep as we'd like them to be. And from my personal point of view, one of those is the tight end position. I don't know how you perceive it. We all know what the struggles of Irv Smith are, and how he might elevate from playing with Joe Burrow, and how might his expectations of earning a big contract next year after catching a few passes and getting a few touchdowns from Joe Burrow would be. But I don't know if there's someone else in case he gets injured. Like, well, in the past couple of years, he has suffered from injuries. I don't know. There's a spot in the roster, or in the 100 positions that you are allowed to have at this time of a year. I don't know if that spot is saved for Wilcox, or if they're expecting some waivers to fall on their knees. How do you see that position?
It's definitely one where you can see, like, because they did last year with Devin Asiasi. He was a waiver claim at the end of training camp and preseason, and he's still with the team now. So that's something I can see happening. They have 89 players on the roster, and they can have one more. That may just be in case they have an injury in other positions. They just need to get another body in there. I think with tight end, it's definitely one of the three positions where they don't have a ton of depth. But I don't know. Like, I feel like it's not as big of a concern compared to maybe like defensive tackle, just because they're only having one tight end on the field at all times. And we saw last year, even when Hayden Hurst kind of went down, you just threw Mitchell Wilcox in there, and the offense, I don't want to say didn't miss a beat, but it wasn't that much of a difference, right? It's not a focal point of their offense, but it definitely helps to have an athlete like Irv Smith, who's a better athlete than CJ Uzama or Hayden Hurst even was, to be able to stretch the field and add a new dimension there. Like, and the fact that he's had injury issues, it's a cause for concern. It's like maybe you want a stable backup there who's, not Drew Sample or Devin Asiasi. But I think when it comes to like depth issues, no team has a ton of depth at the interior offensive line, and that can be such a problem when you have to rely on it. But that is still an area that I think the Bengals can improve. I think defensive tackle, though, is the area of main concern, just because you have guys rotating in and out throughout the season. Injuries are pretty inevitable, and we saw the impact that when DJ Reader went down last year. It's impossible to replace him, right? But they had no one close who could do what he can do in terms of just stuffing gaps and taking on double teams and two gapping in that resort. And they didn't really do anything to that position group this year for this offseason. So it's relying a lot on Zach Carter to take a next step. It's relying a lot on Josh Tupou to just ball out in the last year of his deal. Maybe have some progression from J2 Faley, but they don't have a ton of guys there that you would like. Like there's no Larry Ogunjobi that you can rotate in with BJ Hill at 3 technique, which I feel like is very important. Maybe that's the expectation for Zach Carter this year, but I would have liked to see like one more move at defensive tackle to really solidify the group and go into the season feeling some comfort, because right now it's not really there.
Yeah, of course, and we really agree on that. And I wouldn't like to pass on the opportunity of, we're gonna shift gears here and talk about what's in the future, more administrative maybe. But we saw Mixon getting a pay cut last week, and of course it started moving a lot of pieces on the predictions of how the Bengals might behave contract wise, with extensions coming up, and people they want to keep. Maybe Mixon's was the first domino piece falling in order to get a process going. Who do you think is next in this contractual talk?
Oh, it's the quarterback. Like everything
All
starts
right.
with him, right? Yeah, and like the Mixon situation was kind of procedural just to get to this point. Right now, they have just under $20 million in salary cap space. More importantly, like they're going to have enough cash, or they're going to need enough cash to kind of pay Burrow up front, and part of that cash payment will impact what his salary cap hit will be this year. I think with Mixon's pay cut, it opened up about 4.5 for this year and maybe 4.5 for next year, which will more easily fit both Burrow and T. Higgins if they do end up getting a deal done with Higgins. But I think right now they have numbers in place for both Higgins and Wilson, let's just say. And as soon as they finalize something with the Burrow deal and it's within the parameters of what they're projecting, I think you will then see, at the very least, T. Higgins get a deal done, and maybe even Logan Wilson, just because that'll be the smallest of the 3 deals. But none of this happens until Burrow happens, and he could be waiting to see what Justin Herbert gets. Maybe he wants to make sure that he's the highest paid quarterback entering this season, and it's really all comes down to when that happens.
Yeah, that's it. And I think we all have a consensus in that, that once Herbert gets his deal done, then we're going to see what the Bengals are going to do. Well, with training camps just around the corner, preseason is about to start. What are you most excited to see about these Bengals?
I'm excited about the safeties, just because there's not a ton that we know, and it's 2 new starters. It's kind of scary, but I think if you're looking at any position to handle turnover on defense, it's in the secondary, just because of who the coordinator is and his background. Dax Hill is really exciting, though. He was really exciting in preseason. He looked like by far the best player on the field when they were playing last August. So now he gets a chance to kind of really shine and be more versatile, and being able to move around in the secondary because of the 2 safeties that they have. They're going to play alongside of him. Jordan Battle looks really good in the box. He's really experienced out of Alabama. They really like him. Maybe he ends up starting out of the gate, but Nick Scott is still here, and he has actual starting experience in the NFL. And he can be the guy that can take some of those deep snaps and maybe be a center fielder, or at least play in that 2 high shell along with Dax Hill. The good thing about this is that they're all 3 really good athletes, and they can all be used around, or different parts of the secondary. So you're not pigeonholing Dax Hill as just a deep safety when he has so much experience working in the slot and as an overhang defender. It's just going to be a lot of different looks for them and different alignments for them, which can all kind of go into their strengths. But seeing who the 2 starters are week 1 is going to be really interesting to see.
and how it develops throughout the season, because maybe Battle's not going to be there for maybe week 1, but he'll try to earn a spot. He's very competitive. We all saw how he fits this Bengals philosophy, and well, the fit appears to be right there. So it'll be a great battle to see, using that name also for the anecdote. Well, John, we really appreciate your time and being here on the show again. We expect we have more of these very interesting talks. I don't know if there's something you'd want to say to the Latin American audience that is surely following you after this one.
Yeah, thanks guys for listening so much. Orson does a great job, as you guys all know, and I really appreciate him bringing me back on here. But if you want more content like this, you can check out my written work at azsports.com/Cincinnati. We'd greatly appreciate all the support, and also check out the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast, where I talk in this microphone with my co-host Anthony Cosenza. So really appreciate you having me back on, Orson.
No, we really appreciate having you here. Thank you, John, for your time, and see you next time. Hooday!